This is Stereoactive Presents. I'm your host, Jeremiah McVay, and in this episode, I'm talking with Mr. Scotty Walker about his career in music and education. Mr. Walker was my high school band director, and during his 3 decades at Lafayette High School in Lafayette, Louisiana, he built a music program that grew to be recognized across the state, the region, and the nation. Not only did the band perform on important stages and fields in Louisiana, but it traveled several times to New York City to play at Carnegie Hall and the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade, among many other places, and just recently, toward the end of what was his final school year as director, the band traveled to Hawaii to perform at Pearl Harbor. I had the extreme pleasure of speaking with Mr. Walker about his career just as he was poised for retirement. So yes, this is someone who is important to me personally, and someone who is important to many people. But even if you may not know him, I think there's a lot of what he has to say, especially about education and working with kids, that is certainly of broad interest to anyone who cares about those things. And really, we should all care about those things, I think. So I hope you'll enjoy this in-depth discussion with Mr. Scotty Walker. Scotty Walker has been a teacher for more than 30 years and has led the Lafayette High School band program in Lafayette, Louisiana for most of that time. As a result, he's come into contact with hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands, of students. But this past school year was his last at Lafayette High. On Saturday, June 3rd, there will be a retirement banquet to celebrate his time as an educator and the impact he's had on so many people, and through them, not only the community of Lafayette, but really any community his students have moved to, joined, or built up around themselves as they've gone out into the world. That banquet will be at the Atchafalaya Ballroom at the Student Union on the University of Louisiana campus in Lafayette. I'm very pleased to welcome someone I've known for nearly 30 years, Scotty Walker. Mr. Scotty Walker, I should say. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jeremiah. It's a pleasure for me to be here, man. And thank you for that introduction. You know, I was talking to someone the other day, and, you know, the retirement year is always one of reflection, certainly. And, you know, I've been really amazed at the people who have come through this program. And that's one of the things that I tell people now is that I actually know people. So you're one of those people that to do this kind of a podcast. And, you know, there's so many people out in the community that are doing so many beneficial things. It's really amazing.
Well, thank you for that. I do want to start with your background, you know, because a lot of people know you, but I don't know if everybody knows how you got to be you. So can you tell me how you ended up, first off, playing music?
You know, first of all, my family, they're all Cajun French musicians. So I grew up in the typical Cajun family, to where every weekend we would go to someone's house. Everyone would bring some type of musical instrument, and there would be a barbecue or any kind of food that would be prepared, and people would start drinking beer and start getting their instruments out and start playing Cajun music. And then, you know, it would usually end up with brothers fighting, and everyone would go home. And then the next weekend we'd be back together. And so it was just, we always had a very musical family. I had very talented cousins, and my dad, I mean, my goodness, he played everything. He played the fiddle, the violin. He played guitar. He played steel guitar. He played the accordion. So he played just about everything. So when I was growing up and it was time for me to make the decision about being in band, I went to my dad and I said, you know, I'd like to join band. So he said, okay. Told my mom, go to the music store and get him a saxophone, because that's a typical Cajun instrument that you can play in a Cajun band. He wanted me to play in the Cajun band. So I don't want to play saxophone. I want to play trumpet. And he said, well, too bad. You either play saxophone or you're not playing anything. So we had a huge argument. I went down the street and I was crying because I wanted to play trumpet because of Chuck Mangione. I don't know if you've ever heard that guy. He played flugelhorn, but he was very popular at the time. And he was playing on radio stations. So that's why I wanted to play trumpet. So yeah, he gave in and got me a trumpet. And then, you know, that started a series of a lot of arguments, because he gave me one music lesson in my lifetime. So when I got my trumpet, of course, I just got it, just started learning how to play it. And he said, all right, go get your instrument. So I went and got my instrument, brought it in the kitchen. and he took out his accordion and he started playing, and he said, "All right, play what I just played." And I said, "What note does it start on?" So he started fussing at me. He said, "You don't need to know what note, just play it." And so he
Yeah.
put it up and he said, "Put your horn away." And we're not going to, that was it. I never had another lesson after that, but they were all trained by ear. And, I was, of course, I had to have it on, music on a page. And so that was the conflict there. But that's kind of how I started playing music. Um, and yeah, going into high school, I was not a very strong academic student because, you know, none of my family really went to college. That wasn't really an option for me. The oil field was really big and people were making a lot of money back
Hmm.
then. So that's what my life was destined to be, was work in the oil field. And just before I graduated, that's when the oil crunch hit back in the 80s and everyone lost their job. So I
Hmm.
had to reevaluate and see what I wanted to do. And music was always there for me. It was always something that I could fall back on. It was a safe place for me. I could go in the band room and always feel like I had family. The people that I hung out with at the time was part of the reason why I was not a good student. A lot of them had quit school and went to work, and I didn't do that because band kept me grounded. It kept me in school, and so that's why I I feel that it's so important for kids because band is a safe place.
Hmm.
It's a place for kids to go and try to succeed, to fail, to learn, and they're always accepted, no matter who they are, no matter how uh, how, if they're at the top of their academic class or if they're academically challenged. That it's a place that everyone can feel safe. So when I graduated and the all field was not an option for me, I was pretty good playing trumpet by then. So I said, well, let me just give this a shot and see how it goes. and
Right.
and so that's how it happened. I went to USL at the time and majored in music, and never thought that I would be a teacher. That was the last thing from my mind because I thought I'd be a player, you know?
Right. That actually goes into my next question. But first, I do want to just make the observation. I'm not sure if you would agree with this, that it almost kind of sounds like you playing trumpet and taking the path you did was a rebellious act in a way of doing something that wasn't quite in line with the Cajun tradition in your family and going a little outside of that and then kind of seeing one way your life could go and saying, I'm going to do this instead. So I don't know if you agree with that framing, like I said, but it occurred to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, it really goes back to the popular music of the day, and that being
Hmm.
that Chuck Mangione guy playing on the radio. And I just love the sound of it. And
Right.
so I wanted to play trumpet. And of course Chuck Mangione plays flugelhorn, so it's a little bit different. Um, but yeah, I don't think it was an act of being rebellious towards my family or anything, because I really cherished being able to share those weekends of Cajun French music.
Sure.
And so that was always a really big part of my life. But yeah, I just it did become a situation of um wishing that I had gone more that pathway, because their ear was so developed, and
Hmm.
that's the thing that I didn't have while I was growing up. So
Gotcha. Well, as I said, you were kind of moving us towards my next question of just what made you choose to actually go into education.
well, when I was in school, again, I was more focused on becoming the best trumpet player that I could. Um, and because I wasn't a great student in school, being a teacher was not something that I would think would be a career path for me. So I just continued to develop my skills as a trumpet player. And as I was nearing my graduation, I had applied for a few assistantships at a few universities and had gotten offers. I had also auditioned for some military bands, and actually was in the second round for one of the premier bands in Washington. And everything in life happens and it kind of changes our course. And just before I graduated, my father had passed away a few years earlier, and my mom's health had began to deteriorate. So, that was kind of weighing heavily on me about not being able to go away. I needed to take care of my mom because I am, our family is very small, and I'm the only child. So, that became a great burden on me. And there was a school that was looking for a band director, and they called Lafayette Music Company and said, "You know of anybody graduating?" And they said, "Yeah, Scotty Walker, give him a call." So this guy called me up, and I was still wanting to go play. And he said, "So, we have a position open. Would you be interested in the position?" I said, "No, not really." He said, "Well, why don't you come over and look at the school, and we'll see what you think." So I said, "Okay, I'll go and look at this school." So it was in Eunice, which is about 45, 50 minutes away. So I went over there, and he took me around, showed me the school, and showed me the band room. And then he started talking about, this would be your band room. And then he
Mhm.
goes to the office, "Hey, this would be your office." So I started thinking of it in terms of, profession, and, how I could maybe build something. And, so he took me in the school van, and Eunice is a one school town, one public school in town. And so Eunice High was on the side, and he would drive around the streets, and people would come to the sidewalk and wave. You felt really important whenever you're in the van, and it
Mhm.
felt like you were in a parade just by driving down the streets. So we went to his office, and he said, "Okay," pulled out the pay scale, and it wasn't very much, back then. And so he said, "This is what you'd be making your first year." And as a college student, you looked at it and said, "Okay, now we're talking." So I got home, started talking to my wife at the time, and I said, "Okay, let's try this teaching thing for a little while, and then I can go to graduate school later and pursue the playing thing later. But let's do this, and get my mom's health back and all that stuff." And so that's what I did. I took the job, and the way it goes, I've never really looked back. I've never
Right.
thought about wanting to go back to school and major in performance or anything. And I still play today, but education became the passion for me right away.
Right. Did you have a teacher that made a difference in your life as a teenager? And was that teacher an influence in your decision to become an educator? I know you kind of laid out how you ended up on that path, but as you were deciding to go into education, did you think back on a teacher and think like, that's an inspiration for me here? And this question is inspired by Katie Reed, by the way.
There's always those people along the way. Tim Lotzenheiser, who's been a big inspiration for my entire career, he's been one of those inspirational speakers that I would bring kids to hear him speak. And every single year, I would go and bring kids, or we started bringing him here to Lafayette for a while. And he always told the same stories about the leadership, but man, you went away from what he said with so many valuable things.
Hmm.
One of the things that he said that impressed upon me early on was that, people don't care what you know as long as they know that you care. So, when you find those individuals that that they care about you, then that makes all the difference in the world. I've always had those teachers that really cared. When I was in high school, we had three different band directors the 4 years I was in school. So I never had the opportunity to bond with any of those directors.
Hmm.
But I had a middle school director that really believed in me and challenged me to become better. And that's when I really became better as a player. And we're best friends today. It's Will Green. He's still in town. He works for Lafayette Music Company. And throughout my career, he's always been that person that you can call and ask for advice. And he'll be straight with you. And we'll be straight with each other. And there are the few people that you really feel like you can do that with, and he's been that person throughout my career. So yeah.
And do you remember a good piece of advice you received when you were a young educator, kind of just starting out at Eunice? Or maybe at Lafayette Middle or
There's always those little nuggets that you always get. And I would go to as many clinics as I could and listen to some of the great directors. And Eunice was a great place to start. There were a lot of challenges that were going on over there, but I still lived in Lafayette, so the travel was really far.
Mhm.
And I knew that I wanted to get back to Lafayette Parish. This is where I wanted to teach. And I knew that I wanted high school. But, it's hard to get a high school job when you don't have experience. So there was a position that came open in Lafayette Middle at the time. I interviewed for the position, and the principal offered the job to me. And I said, thanks, but I really don't want to teach middle school. I want to teach high school, so I don't think I'll take it. And he said, okay, well, if you change your mind, let me know. And then, after a few days of thinking about it, I decided that I would reconsider. And I gave him a call and I said, hey, is the job still open? He said, yeah, absolutely. You want it? He said, this may be the way to get your foot in the door for Lafayette Parish, because it was a great parish to teach in. So I took the job and did that for a little while. Applied for different high schools, didn't get those jobs. And then Lafayette High came open. And there was a lot of people that went to bat for me to try to get the job, because there was a lot of people that were trying for the job because, it was Lafayette High. But at the time, there were 4 band directors that had gone through here in 5 years. So there was some turmoil, some problems that were happening at the time. So, right about that time, I went to a clinic with someone from Atlanta who had built one of the most successful programs in the nation. It's the Lassiter High School program. Just an unbelievable band program. So I went to a clinic where he was speaking, and he said, when he finally figured it out, his greatest advice is find your place and build a kingdom. So when he told me that, it just kind of stuck with me, and everything was in place for Lafayette Parish, for Lafayette High School. Just a tremendous support system, great teaching faculty. The administration was fantastic, very supportive at the time. The middle schools had established middle school directors there that were teaching the kids the greatest fundamentals that they could have when they would get to the high school. So everything was in place to build a kingdom kind of thing. And I saw that potential. And when I saw that and I got the job, and at first, because of the enormity of the program and the traditions, the past traditions, and it's the first high school in Lafayette Parish, so it had been around for a long time. So there were lots of traditions, lots of great directors that were here. So when I first got the job, I was like, oh crap, now what? And it was one of those moments where after I finally started thinking about everything, I was really excited about the potential that there could be here, and it's just built on, all of the people who it takes a village in everything that you do. So I've tried to surround myself with the best possible people to be able for us to be able to experience the success for students. And another great quote, I love this quote. This is one of the quotes that I've cherished my entire career. I was when I first started judging concert festivals, I sat down with an old guy at the time. He was retired at the time, and we're in a hotel. So in the morning we'd wake up early enough, and I'd ask him to go sit down and have breakfast with him. And I'd just ask him to talk, and I'd listen to all of the things that he would have to say. And there was one thing he said one morning that it was just so profound for me. And I was just like, wait a minute, say that again. And then he had to say it a few times for it to sink in. And I was like, I got to write this down. So I took my receipt and I wrote it on the back of the receipt. And then I folded it up and put it in my wallet and kept it my whole career.
Oh, wow.
He said, one of the greatest sins a teacher can commit is to not sufficiently prepare his students for the challenges he forces them to accept. We always try to push excellence and strive to do our best and always raise the bar. But at the same time, we had to make sure that we would provide the skills for the students and provide them all the necessary tools to experience that success. So,
well, as someone who came through your band program and kind of knows your history and knows other people who've come through a band program since then, like I mean, you followed those 2 pieces of advice to the T, I would say.
Well, thank you.
And by the way, that question was based on questions from both David Gallon and Frank Graffinino.
Oh, wow.
But a little follow-up to that is, obviously, like I said, those seem like guiding principles that you really took to heart. Have you passed those on to any young educators over the years yourself, as you've become a mentor figure, or at least been like up the chain from people, so to speak, as they've come up?
As many people that'll listen, I try to share those little bits of information with them. Yeah, I've shared those quotes with numerous people, and again, the person that told me about the one of the greatest sins a teacher can commit.
Hmm.
His name is Red Laperouse, which he retired and he lives on Toledo Bend and fishes every day, and but he's still very active in the judging community right now. So,
Oh,
but yeah,
nice.
I think it's valuable that he did that for me, and I feel like it's important that the old timers share that with the new guys. And from what I can tell, it seems like they're appreciative, certainly, to be able to hear those kinds of stories.
That's great. So, what are the two biggest changes, if you can identify them, in the world during your time as a musician and educator that have most affected how you yourself approach both music and education?
I'm very active in our state music organization, the Louisiana Music Educators Association. So we see around the state the challenges that are there.
Hmm.
The biggest change, the biggest challenge that I've experienced throughout my career is that there's more emphasis put on accountability for students, and a lot of times it's people who are setting these policies that are not necessarily in education, but it's about the test scores, the
Hmm.
school scores that make it very difficult for kids today. It creates a lot of pressure on kids, so it becomes more about passing the test and not necessarily all the time on what's best for the students. If
Right.
that makes any sense. But
Definitely.
I spoke with someone at the central office, and they were talking about why there's so many challenges today. What are the problems? And he said this is how you can fix music and for kids to be able to take those extracurricular activities when they get to high school. The way that you fix it is you have to improve the reading scores in elementary school. So
Mm.
I didn't think that that's the answer that I would get.
Right.
But when he said it, it made so much sense because what's happening is, you know, you have kids that don't read at the grade level that they're supposed to. So they have to start taking more remedial classes. So the more remediation they have to take, then the less opportunity there is for them to take
Right.
those non-tested subjects. So they become less important for the school score, but they're more important for the student because again, in this world of social economic learning and how valuable the music is for that, but testing is kind of the opposite of that. Jeremiah, when you were here, there was not as much emphasis on that, but it's
Right.
become the driving force in education today. And once you achieve a certain score at the school, then that's not good enough. You gotta get a higher score. So how do we get those higher scores? All of those equate to things that take away from things that nurtures the kid, the
Hmm.
arts. Because again, those are not tested, so it's not important. The important things are the things that you can improve your school score on. That's been the biggest change and the biggest challenge throughout my career. So I don't know what the answer is for that.
Right.
That's certainly another week long of podcasts with talking to
Oh, more than that, I'm sure. But I
yeah.
do want to point out for people who can't see you that I saw you doing some air quotes around importance that I think make total sense because it's something that is made to be important because of the reasons you just laid out, but maybe it shouldn't be as important, which I think is your point. Yeah, and let me know if I got that incorrect in my summation of
No,
that.
I,
But
th- I think you're right on, Jeremiah. That's been the hardest thing to, and not just with me. I mean, I see the
yeah,
pressure of the classroom teachers that it's they have a lot of challenges because their job performance is based on how their kids score, and
hmm,
sometimes
yeah,
people are very fortunate whenever they live in a household with a mom and dad that again you can go back to if they're read to at an early age, but what about those kids that don't have that opportunity, and there's so many challenges there for them. again, I don't know what the answers are for those kinds of things, but it is
Right.
something that is not moving in a positive direction, I think, for
Yeah.
teachers and
That's
for
too bad.
students. There's more kids that are depressed now.
Hmm.
There's more issues with things like that, and that's why I think that when they're able to do things like the arts and the extra things that make it fun for them to come to school,
Right.
then it helps them to be able to get through that process. But if it's always about the class, the
Right.
classwork, and
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this really addresses the issue. I mean, it's not a solution, obviously, but I remember years ago when people started like, or at least when I became much more aware of the use of the term STEM, STEM. I remember someone saying it should really be STEAM. You need that A in there for the arts because it's not a holistic approach to developing children if you don't give them that ability or at least opportunity, because the arts aren't for everyone, but having the opportunity there for people to explore that and find it for themselves if it makes sense. Like it seems like a shame that that gets cut out so often. I am curious though. I mean, Lafayette High has continued to be one of if not the top program from my understanding in the parish and maybe the states of Louisiana, right? So I mean, how have you managed to do that? Is like there's something you can think of that you think is the the cornerstone of you continuing that in the face of what you're describing of the education system being more focused on things that don't necessarily allow people to get into band and the arts in the way that you would hope.
Yeah, I think that we've been very lucky here at Lafayette High School because it all goes back to parental support, of course, and
Right.
the parents see the value of their kids participating in something like this, and that's always been one of the greatest things about our program here. Um, they have to buy into it. Now COVID has really created some challenges for that,
I'm sure.
because we couldn't play in school for a year and a half, really. So what do you do when you play a musical instrument but you can't play in school? So
Right.
that created a lot of challenges for us that we're starting to dig our way out of the hole right now. Um, so I think that's going to get better as time goes on, but that's created more challenges than anything, I think. So and then the opportunities that we've given students to be able to go and play in Carnegie Hall every few years. I mean, middle
Yeah.
school students, I'd go and visit them, and they would look at me and say, you know, when I'm a sophomore, because we would go every 4 years, and I would always tell people, in 4 years we're gonna go to Carnegie Hall and play, and so kids' parents would look forward to that. They'd say, when I'm going to be a sophomore, we're going to go to Carnegie Hall or something like that. So those opportunities are certainly unique for people to be able to look forward to, and trips
Right.
always help.
Yeah, sure, sure. We'll come back to trips in a minute, I think.
Okay.
Why don't we take a quick break? We're largely talking about so far the program as a whole, but is there anything you did or learned to do that helped you to build positive individual relationships with so many students over the years? Because I know that you have done that. I mean, you did that with people in my class, and I'm sure you've continued to do it. And by the way, this is based on a question from Erica Renee Christoph.
Erica Christoph. Wow, man, it's so great to hear all these names. Number one, I've always tried to be fair for every student. I've tried not to show favoritism, um, because I wanted my students to know that I truly and genuinely cared about everyone. So that's when I first heard Tim Lotzenheiser say, "People don't care what you know; they want to know that you care." So I've always tried to instill that. So I think my students always knew. High school is a tough time, man. So it's
Hmm.
there's so many challenges for kids to go through high school, but they always knew that they had a place they could come in my office, talk to me about any problems that they had, and I was more than happy to be able to sit, listen, and I would always tell them, I may not be able to give you the greatest advice in the world, but I'm a really good listener. I'll be happy to listen to anything that you have to say. So I think that people felt that from me. I think that they knew it's very demanding. Um, and when it came to marching band, that's when the discipline came into place. Uh, I think discipline is good for kids. And I knew that they respected that, but they knew that, you know, after your freshman year of coming through the program and the fear of me at first, I think the next year just became better, that they knew that they could come and talk to me whenever they felt like. And I've always had help in the office with an assistant that would help me with the daily operations of the band, because it was such a huge program. I couldn't have done it all.
Sure.
And at the time when Erica was here, there was one person who I loved dearly, and she was so valuable to this program. She was as much of a counselor and a second mom as anyone else. It was Miss Nan.
Yeah, I remember her. Yes.
Yep, Nan Tolley, who her husband was the baseball coach here.
Yeah.
Still is. He's retiring this year too, by the way.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. But she was so dear to the program, and she was almost like an assistant director, but even more valuable because of what she brought. And then when she left, we had Cindy Sabo, who was a retired band director, who came in, and I was always able to have that person that I could bounce ideas off of, and certainly all of the assistants that we've had in the past. So
right. Yeah, Miss Nan was great. I'm sure that if anyone who followed her was sort of in that mold, I'm sure that they were great resources both for you and for the kids, because she was always so welcoming of the students, as I remember her. Yeah,
absolutely. Yep.
Can you remember a time when something a student did or said either impacted you personally or maybe affected the way you taught or approached music and education going forward?
A lot of times, students don't share things with you while they're here because they stay guarded.
Sure.
And a lot of times you don't hear those stories until they graduate, and they feel like they need to share their experience with you. The numerous letters that I would get from students who would come through the program and talk about how much it meant to them, how much the program meant to them, and how much it saved them, or it was so valuable that they had so many challenges in life. And that was always very special throughout my career, to be able to get those kinds of heartfelt messages about how valuable band was here at Lafayette High School. And that's probably the most special thing of all throughout my career is what it meant to people to go through the program.
Right. I don't know if you remember this, but I did send you a letter, I think during my freshman year of college, because I was very self-conscious about the fact that I didn't go into music. And I was afraid you were going to be disappointed with that. I remember sending you a letter basically saying, like, I hope you're not disappointed I didn't go into music. I learned so much from it. And my intention at that time was to find ways to play music, even though I didn't go into it professionally or in school, in college, and which I did. I played in bands for years afterwards, and I'm still in and around music to this day.
I do remember that letter, and I still have it. I've got a drawer full of those letters. But yeah, and you were so talented, Jeremiah. I mean, you still are. So all of those talented students, I was always trying to push them to go into music because I know what they could bring to it. But certainly, I was never disappointed when they wouldn't go into music, because I know that, as you said earlier, it's not for everybody, But the important thing was just how successful everybody is in their chosen field.
Yeah. And to be clear, it was for me. I just decided not to do it in college as that path, I mean, so much of what's great in my life at this point is because I had music in my life. And I see that as an extension of my time in band with you. I understood music in a way that allowed me to sort of participate in it with other people in my 20s and kind of like form a community with those people. And it's been like a guiding thing through my life, really. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, that question was based on one from Rachel Smith, who I think was Rachel Stevens when we were in school.
Yes. Yes.
So I remember my 4 years of high school as being filled with, cycles and patterns. That's what school seems like when you're a kid, at least, that repeat over time. So I'd imagine those patterns and cycles must have become even stronger and more noticeable for you over the course of 3 decades. For me, it was 4 years or 12 years if you think about the entire length of school. But with that in mind, what were your favorite kind of days? The ones that made you smile or helped you remember why you were doing what you were doing? I feel like we've already probably touched on some things that relate to that.
I think you start with the hardest kinds of days. Going back to preparing students for the challenges you force them to accept. The worst kinds of days were when kids wouldn't get it,
Mm-hmm.
or if there would be some students who wouldn't come back to band the next year, or I would always look at myself and say, what did I do or what did I not do to reach those students, or what did I not do to better prepare for that lesson? And man, I would beat myself up when we'd have a bad class day or a bad rehearsal day. I'd go home and I would just I couldn't sleep at night just trying to figure out what to do to make it better.
Right.
So my favorite kinds of days is when I'd go in and I'd try to make sure that I did a good job for the students, because we always, you got to point your finger at yourself first. If students aren't doing well, then it's probably something that you're not doing to help them succeed. So, I'm not a very good golfer, but it's kind of like a golf swing. It's like when you go on the golf course and for the whole 18 holes, you have that one shot that you hit the sweet spot and it sails on you, and you're like, okay, well, I can come back to this thing, and so that as a teacher, you make so many mistakes, especially when you first start teaching.
Mhm.
But when you finally get it to where your students understand, then it keeps you coming back for more. And
Right. Well, I feel like you answered my follow-up within that of like, what were the hardest kind of days? And by the way, those questions were based on something from Christian Cooper Riggs.
Jeremiah, there are so many of those hard days.
Yeah.
I mean, I thank God for my wife, who is always your sounding board. And she helped me get through a lot of those challenges. And if it wouldn't for her, then I always tell everyone that she's been my rock throughout my career, and that's the truth. Because if you wouldn't have that life's partner that would help you get through those things, then it would be impossible. And she has certainly been that person for me.
Yeah, I'm sure. So you've been both a leader and a mentor, and you've also helped students to become leaders and mentors. I think that's one of the biggest things that comes out of band for people. Like that's one of the biggest things they get out of band, besides being better at music. So what's the most important quality you think someone needs to have or be within themselves to be a good leader or mentor?
Yeah, I don't know if this answers your question, Jeremiah, but I think, when a student comes through the program, the band program, they learn so many valuable life's lessons that helps to better prepare them to tackle the challenges of life, to be leaders, to be better people, to be better citizens. They learn how to better manage their time. They learn how the success that they experience in life is based on the tenacity to never give up. From high expectations, they learn how to achieve better results. That's what we've always tried to
Right.
promote here in the band program. But of course, the other advantage that's a huge advantage, and I talked about this earlier on, it's just the band and its acceptance of everyone. That's so valuable when you learn how to be accepting of everyone, no matter what their academic status is, or their socioeconomic status is, or how athletic they are, or whatever the case may be. But just an opportunity for it to be inviting for everyone. And through that, I mean, there's a lot of leadership that's involved in that, the acceptance of everyone. You don't always see that in every organization, and certainly when you're in high school.
Right.
So that's universal with band everywhere, I think.
Right. So the ability to accept everyone is a quality that a good leader should have or will probably have.
Yeah, because the good leader, because they accept everyone, sets as a good example for people in what good leaders are. And good leaders, they allow people to try things, to
Hmm.
succeed, to fail, and to nurture those people to be able to not give up.
Hmm.
You still think about those leaders when you come into the band program that we would always have those final meetings, and when as a freshman, who was it? What person in the band was it that meant the most to you? What leader was that?
Oh, you're asking
You know,
me?
yeah, I just I'm always interested to hear what people have to say and those names that come up.
You're flipping it on me. so,
Yeah, right.
so who, as a freshman, who did I look to as a leader?
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely would have to say Stephen Tobin was
Oh yeah.
somebody because I don't know if you know this. I'm actually older than him, even though was a grade ahead of me in school.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because of the way our birthdays worked out and where we started school. I started in Texas. He started in Louisiana. Cutoffs were
Oh
different,
okay.
but I still like think of him as older than me because he was always ahead of me by a grade in school. I knew him at Paul Bro when we were there in middle school. But I definitely remember he was someone who I looked up to my freshman year. Probably Chris Corville, if you remember him. He wasn't there the entire time. I think
I remember Chris.
yeah.
Yeah, but what were some of those qualities? I'm curious that,
I don't know. It's something that's hard to put a finger on it. Like I do think it is something connected at least to what you were talking about of like you can tell that they care about what they're doing and they care about what you're doing. And there's some people who I think that can come off as irritating. They care a little too much about what you're doing, but some people like you can tell that they like have a genuine interest in trying to help you,
that's right. That's what I was going to say,
and
a genuineness about it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I definitely always saw that in Steven. I'm trying to think of who else. I mean, this is maybe a cop out, but definitely Ray Theo. He was the instructor for the drumline, so that was literally his job was to be that for us.
Yeah.
But I thought he did a good job of it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's who comes to mind right off. Definitely Jennifer Mills, who was,
Yeah.
of course, a drum major.
I talk about Jennifer Mills even to this day. She was
Yeah.
kind of the drum major's drum major.
Yeah,
There
I
there
would
was no
imagine.
one that people respected more than Jennifer Mills. And you mentioned Frank Graffinino earlier,
Sure.
but for our state contest here, showcase this year, there was a group of people that came over, and Frank said that he's still intimidated by Jennifer. She was there, and she has that effect on people. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, and she's definitely one of those people who you could tell she cared about everything going as well as it could. And she wanted,
absolutely.
and it not in a way of like being critical, because I think that for some people it comes off as overly critical, whereas she just wants you to do your best. I thought so. That's what I thought made her a good leader. And
Yeah,
yeah,
and the high expectations were there. She demanded you do. Yeah, I mean, all of those qualities were there, and
right.
those are such good qualities in leaders. Yep. And so each one of those people you mentioned had that.
But I think it's important also that it's not just that they demanded the best, is that if they didn't feel like you were giving your best, they would inquire. They would try to figure out like what they could do to help you.
That's
So it
right.
wasn't it
That's right.
wasn't just being demanding. It was backing that up with a sense of help, a sense of
Yes.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. And they had a unique way of, and I've always tried to do that throughout my career. Sometimes kids may act up in class, and rather than fussing at them in the moment, then if you talk to them after and you say, hey, what's going on, man? What's
Hmm.
happening? And then you'll find out things that are happening at home
Sure.
or other places that are contributing to that. But yeah, there's usually a reason behind why they may be acting up or whatever. So good leaders
Totally.
always have a way to be compassionate in how they approach their students. Yeah.
And let's take a quick break. what are the 2 or 3 decisions that you made, either intentionally or unintentionally, that you feel really set the path for growth and sustainability of the band program at Lafayette High?
I think certainly the greatest driving force throughout my career is just to continually seek to better your craft. To attend clinics and to continue to educate yourself throughout the process
Hmm.
on how you can become a better band director. But more importantly, again, when I first started teaching, I thought it was gonna be about the music. It was all gonna be about the music because that's all that I really knew before. But it didn't take me that long to realize that the emotion that we strive to achieve through the music can only truly be realized through the nurturing of the young people in which we teach. So that was certainly something that I've tried to nurture throughout my career. You spoke earlier about what it meant to you to continue to play. So there's something inside of you that spoke to the benefits of being able to have that outlet.
Right.
A lot of the performances we've had have all been very special, but I've always told everyone that it's really been about the journey to get to those performances that make the performances that much more special, because those are the celebrations of the pathway that we've taken to get there. I received a letter after one of our performances. It was from someone not in the music, and I don't know if this is pertaining to this question, but it's something that just struck me
Yeah.
about the emotion that we strive to achieve. And but she felt compelled to send me a letter that said, "I'm not in music, and I've always been envious of when people talk about the emotion that they feel through music, because I've never felt it before, and I'm now over 50 years old." This person said, but she said for the last concert, I was moved to tears with the performance. So that's always been very special when that emotion transfers to
Right.
people in the audience.
No,
And
that's
again, I don't know
that's
if that
great.
question had anything to do with what you just asked,
No,
but
that's fine. That's fine. But by the way, that question was from Bonnie Stevens White.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, okay, my time in band ended 25 years ago now, but I still have melodies that are stuck in my head from pieces we played then. Like they live rent free up there, I swear. Like I can't tell you how often, if there's a piano nearby and it's not going to be too annoying to anyone, I'm going to be going dun 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 dun. Yeah, but that's
Hey,
Escape from Plato's Cave
not
for people.
not bad singing for a drummer, by the way.
Oh yeah, thank you, thank you. Uh, so, are there pieces of music that have become earworms for you that you find yourself maybe humming or whistling, despite how long it's been, maybe since you last heard or conducted them? So, not
Oh my
something from the
goodness.
last year or two, maybe something from further back that just will not get out of your head.
The year that you were rehearsing that music, you just can't get it out of your head.
Yeah,
But there's always tunes. I can't pinpoint anything in particular, but there's always tunes that will resurface years later.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
So, well, I guess maybe a version of the question then is like what makes you choose to bring a piece back several years later? Is it because like somehow it popped into your head and you're like, I just really want to do that again, and I think that the students would appreciate this, and like what makes you choose to bring something back?
There's always the band classics that have significant educational value that you feel it's important to share with your students
Hmm.
uh, from time to time. And certainly one of those pieces were Lincolnshire Posy. I don't know, it's Percy Granger wrote that piece, and once I was exposed to it and I learned it, I try to bring it back every 4 years. There are always those pieces of significance that you feel that you want people to experience. I would always try to search for those pieces of music. There's the music of dance, music of song, and then there's music of color. That explores the different possibilities that there are with playing band music. I've never really sought after those kinds of pieces because I always wanted to share the pieces of dance, of song, and of emotion that brought out those kinds of qualities, and people could share. And it was only a personal preference to me. One of my best friends that is an educator. We would always, I wouldn't say argue, but we have very different taste in music, and we always talk about, why our choosing is more significant than what they're choosing or whatever. But it's just, whatever we're more comfortable with. So.
Right. So what was your favorite band trip? And do you have
Oh
a favorite
man,
marching band show? So 2 questions for you.
I get asked the marching band show question a
I'm
lot.
sure.
Yeah, because there are some that marked a significant time in the development of our band.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think when you were here, the show that we did, the Mermaid Show.
Oh,
Um,
Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner?
yes, the
That
Rhyme of
was
the
my
Ancient
freshman
Mariner.
year. Yeah.
Okay, well, that was the first time that we took the band to our state contest that year,
Oh, that was the
and
first year. I didn't realize that. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
that was the very first year that we went, and back in the day, I was writing the drill and I was doing a lot of it. In fact, band directors are notorious for when they write the drill, they'll stay up all night and go to school the next day because it takes that long to write the drill.
I'm sure.
And Jennifer Mills would I don't know what the mode of communication was back then. It wasn't texting, obviously, but she would say, "You need to go to sleep." So. But it was fun to write the drill back then, and
Yeah.
we experienced a lot of success with that first show.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, I remember the rehearsals that we had that year, and we had a lot of rain, so there was a lot of muddy feels for that
Mm-hmm.
rehearsal. The trumpets, they were pretty much marching in a mud pit down there, but that's certainly one of great significance. We did a show called Exodus one year, and that's when I really feel like we started turning the corner as far as the reputation of the band. It was a very challenging show. It was fast. The drill was crazy. And again, there was a lot of great success with that and that show.
Right.
And then 2008, we went to Grand Nationals and we placed finals with that show.
Oh, nice.
2011 was another great year because we won the national AAA championship that year.
Oh, wow.
That was pretty special in that year.
Yeah.
But every show is really special.
Sure.
They're just some of them that stick out because of those significant times. And and then of course you weren't here when we did it, but another significant thing for the marching band now is this thing called tuba fanfare. Have you heard of the tuba fanfare?
No.
Yeah, it's kids were asking to play that. The tubas were asking for several years, and I'd say, no, we're not going to do it. And so finally, in a moment of weakness, I said, okay, go ahead and do it. And it's just this loud fanfare, tuba and drums. And man, it's become almost our second fight song. People request it all the time. And if we don't do it at a football game, then we'll hear about it. But, the band is popular at football games and they'll chant tuba, 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 so.
That's fun. Yeah. I mean, I remember with my freshman year show, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, I didn't realize that was the first year that the band had gone to showcase over at UL. But we won grand champions of that show. And I do think that sort of set things up for people in my class of like, oh, this is what this is going to be. This is a bigger thing than we even realized, having gone through all the work that we did to get to that point where we could pull that off, But I really do think it set the stage for our 4 years there,
Yeah, it really did. Yeah, that was my second year here. So my first year, I didn't feel comfortable to bring the band to the state contest. So that's why I waited until the second year. And then the freshman class that came up, I think we may have doubled the band size when you guys came up as freshmen that year. It was a huge class and you guys were so talented. So then again, I felt comfortable with being able to take the band to the state contest. And yeah, man, I mean, it was mayhem because the state championship band had been the state championship band for so many years that it was unfathomable that anyone could go and win that year. But it just so happens that they had problems during their marching show at the time, and we had a flawless performance. So it happened on that particular evening that we did better, So, but
I could cut this out if you don't want me to be saying their name, but yeah, I do remember that Como High Um, they won everything else, but we somehow won grand champion. It was kind of wild.
It's perfectly okay because Como High School was the, I mean, they were the cornerstone. They were the
Yeah,
epitome of what everyone aspired to be, and they had won so many times that, it's kind of like when there's a champion in an athletic event.
yeah,
Everybody wants someone else to beat them,
right.
and that's kind of how it was. And there was traditions that were established then, because when we were named grand champions and everyone was going crazy, we said, all right, let's go out to the parking lot. So we went to the parking lot and we played for our family and friends in the parking lot. And that was kind of the beginning of our, what we call the parking lot performance now. And a lot of
Right.
times whenever we do the showcase show, it, that sometimes is more meaningful to have our own personal experience. And it's the last time the seniors play and all that stuff. And,
Yeah.
it's interesting how some of the traditions are established,
Right. By the way, the question about favorite band trip and marching band show was from Miranda Bernard.
Favorite band trip. We didn't
Yeah.
really talk.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you were evading the question. So, but
Oh,
if
no.
if you have an answer, that would be great.
I mean, there are so many favorite band trips. I mean, how can you top going to Carnegie Hall in New York City
Yeah.
and being able to experience the things in New York City, like Broadway shows, and those are life-changing experiences. I've known students that decided that they were going to move to New York after they graduated, and so there's just you can't really top being able to play in Carnegie Hall. I mean, that's the epitome of any concert stage in the world. And
Hmm.
so all of those trips, I think we've been to 6 total, going back every 4 years. All of those are meaningful and very special. Um, this past year we went to Hawaii, which, I've been wanting to go to Hawaii, and finally we went this year. And, being able to play at Pearl Harbor, the significance of that site, and just being
Right.
able to play patriotic music was a highlight for me, certainly. And just the trip in general. It's people that have graduated before. It's always special when you get to visit one of those places and you get to somebody that's graduated here before. There was a
Right.
person that lives there now, Stephanie Hartley. She called up and she said, "Hey, would you like to come and take a tour of where I work?" And so I said, "Well, sure. What do you do?" And she said, "Well, I work for the MIA POWs
Oh,
that
wow.
we try to identify the remains and everything." So, man, we went on a tour of that place, and it was just it was so overwhelming
I'm sure.
what she does. And
Yeah.
she told us stories about what it means to the families when they finally identify someone. And that's when I finally started realizing that I know great people.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I am one of those people who I was on that first trip to New York for Carnegie Hall that the band did, and I literally remember being in New York and saying, like, I think I could live here. And then I went to NYU and lived in New York for 21 years before finally moving away. And I think the second Carnegie Hall trip, while I was in college, I went to see y'all and said hi to you and stuff.
Yeah.
It was great to be able to do that. So besides the trumpet, what is your favorite instrument to listen to? Also, is there one instrument you wish you played proficiently that you don't? And this is from Claire Coussin.
Man, I love listening to all different types of music and all different types of instruments. It just really all depends on the mood that I'm in, that what I listen to as far as instruments. But I always say that if I hadn't chosen the trumpet, I would have been a percussionist, because I love the versatility behind being a percussionist. You can play
Hmm.
keyboard instruments, you can play drum set, you can get behind a snare drum on the marching line or whatever. And so that was probably my favorite minor instrument course in college, was learning how to play all of the percussion instruments.
Well, you just made a lot of saxophonists upset, but that's okay. So, was Fields of Gold an intentional choice the first time you played it for students, or did it just happen to be a random choice that stuck, I guess, for 30 years from what I'm told? And if you don't mind, could you explain this for anyone listening who may not have been a student of yours?
I knew that during marching season, we needed some kind of an outlet to relax. And, I'm a huge Sting fan, and I've always loved the Fields of Gold. And I thought that that would be a good selection for people to, just take a moment during a hot marching rehearsal and lay down on the ground and go to your happy place. We talk about, sticking your head in a freezer or something to where you cool off a little bit. So it was a natural selection for me. At first, when you guys graduated, I thought that I was going to have to graduate that song and let it go and pick another song for the next class. And when I started talking, I always try to involve the students as much as possible. So I was talking to a student at the time, and I brought the drum majors in, and
Hmm.
Sarah Hanks was the drum major at that time, and I said, "Okay, now we need to pick a new song for next year because the graduating class left, and so we need to find something besides Fields of Gold." And she got really upset with me, and she said, "That's not their song. That's our song. Why do we have to pick another song?" And that was one of those moments where I was like, "Okay, so Fields of Gold it is." So that was a learning moment for me, I guess.
Right.
So we just played that every year. We have played it every year ever since. And kids know when that song comes on, I don't have to say anything. They just lay down
Right.
on the ground. They chill out. And the funny thing is, no matter where we are, when we went to New York the last time and did the Macy's parade, and we always do a dinner dance cruise on the last night.
Hmm.
And then in Hawaii, we did the same thing. Well, inevitably, one of the kids requests Fields of Gold. And so no matter what's going on, how hot and sweaty they are, the song comes on and automatically they lay down. And the people on the boat start freaking out. And they're like, what's going on? Are they
That's funny.
okay? So we always get that reaction whenever that happens. It's always really funny,
That's
but
really funny. Well, I have to ask though, because I feel like that song was obviously much more contemporary to our class, as you kind of said. But was there a year where the first time the song came on, some people were like, "What is this song?" Because it was an older song to them, or is it still in the zeitgeist enough that people know it when you put it on their first time hearing it in that context?
yeah, every once in a while it'll come on one of the older rock stations or something.
Okay.
But yeah, I've never actually had to sit a class down, a freshman class down, and say, okay, when you hear this song, this happens. I think it just the song plays, and then the freshmen see everybody laying down, and they're like, okay, what's going on over here? And then the
Right.
upperclassmen around them just say, just lay down and don't say anything. So it just kind of happens naturally.
Okay. The Fields of Gold question, by the way, was from Beth Bienvenue Chasson. Claire Cousson asked another question, though. Are you still digging on James Brown?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Tower of Power. That's the best marching fundamental songs you could possibly have. I mean, there's such a that funk they play, man. They've got such a heavy groove that it helps fundamentals go much smoother. In fact, Tower of Power was playing a concert here in Lafayette several years ago, and I just had to get up to the stage and talk to the Barry sax player. And I just said, "Hey, man, I'm a high school band director here, and we use your songs for all of the marching fundamentals." And he was like, "Really? Okay, well that's cool, man." So that was kind of
Yeah,
a neat moment for me. But
that's fun.
yes, I am definitely still digging on James Brown.
There we have the official answer. So we've talked a lot about like what your inspirations were, how you got into teaching, but as I said at the beginning, and you've been doing this now for 3 decades, really longer when you take into account outside of Lafayette High, so Lafayette Middle, Eunice, as you said. What motivated you to teach for as long as you did? And is there anything that specifically made you decide to retire, if that's something you're comfortable talking about?
I saw the benefits that music provides for kids. It was never just about the music, but it was about the byproduct of what music provides. Band is a metaphor of life. You learn so many things through music to make you better people, better citizens. So it was always a great joy for me. Students challenged me certainly to continue to be better, and it was the most gratifying thing to see what it meant for students to be able to come in as a freshman, and by the time they graduated and on to college, what they would become. Jeremiah, I think that as you get older, the challenges become greater, both from teaching standpoint and all the byproducts of what teachers have to do. I never wanted to get to the point where I would feel that I wasn't contributing fully to the students and continuing to give them the energy that they deserved. And I just felt like that was starting to go away for me. And I could feel my tank starting to get lower, and I just felt like the time was right. And back in the day when the old timers would say, "You'll know when the time is right," I was like, "Man, the time is never going to be right. I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life." And then I started kind of experiencing that, and I never wanted to get to the point where I couldn't feel good about giving my all to the students. And like I said, I started to kind of experience that just a little bit. And I just, I wanted to, I thought it was a good time for me to retire now. I'm not any means am I ready to stop. I'm still going to be very active. Like I said, I'm active in the State Music Association, and I'm sure I'm going to go around and I think that mentoring some of the younger teachers now is something that I can certainly contribute to the profession, and I look forward to being able to do those kinds of things. So the challenges are going to be great for Lafayette High School moving forward. I know you've heard that there's going to be a new school here.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 2 years, there's going to be a brand new high school, and it's going to be magnificent, man. It's going to be beautiful. I was fortunate to be on the committee that began with talks of what we wanted the school to look like. And, truthfully, it was difficult to not be here to see the new school open.
I bet.
It made me reconsider whether I wanted to retire and stick around for it. But again, it's just the time is right. But that school, man, wait till it's built. You're going to see it's going to be a great place. And the person who's taken over for me, Ronnie Gleason, he's a dear friend of mine. I really regard him more of a brother than anything else. But he was here for a while, and then he left. And then, I told him, I'm looking at retirement in the next few years if he'd be interested to come back, because I don't think that there could be anybody better to take over the program here at Lafayette High, because I know he's going to continue with the traditions that we have in place. And he's a great musician, and I know that they're gonna be even better than before. So I'm happy that he's going to be taking on. And the assistant who was just hired is a former Lafayette High graduate, a drummer, who's coming back to Lafayette High, and he's going to do a fantastic job as the assistant. His name's Avery Guidry, so he was announced last week. So
great, yeah. I wondered who was going to be stepping in. I wondered if it would be Mr. Gleason. I believe he started with Lafayette High when I was in school in some capacity. I can't remember if he was like a teacher or an assistant then, or if he was just helping with marching season or something like that. But I have memories of him, I think.
Yeah, he's been around for a long time, and he was probably an instructor back when you were here.
Yeah.
But he's taught. I think he's taught in Rain. He's taught in Delcom. Taught at St. Thomas More. Taught at Carencro for several years.
Right.
And just never really found a home. But I think this is going to be a good place for him for the next few years.
Right. And by the way, with the new school, I have a feeling they'll let you on campus if you want to come check it out. I have a feeling,
Well, I certainly hope so, man. I'd love to see, especially I'm thrilled that when they build schools nowadays, auditoriums are not in the plans because it's expensive. Sure. Yeah. But I think that there's going to be an auditorium in the new Lafayette High School, and it's going to be spectacular.
Right. So this next question is based on one I got from Rachel Smith or Rachel Stevens, but it does echo something that I said at the very top of the show, I think. So not to put you too much on the spot, but you've taught probably thousands of students over the years, and the lessons you've taught all those people are things they've taken forward into their lives. they've applied them to the way they move through the world with their families, coworkers, or even students of their own in some cases. So do you ever think about how the impact you've had on people in turn has an impact on people you've never met? And I mean, not to go there, but probably people who will also outlive us all, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've never really given much thought to that. I've had this conversation with my wife before because, again, this year has given me an opportunity to reflect and look back on my career. And then when I start thinking about the people and who they've become, then I start to kind of realize that you never do it with the intention of having that impact or what it means to people, but now that I look back on it, I'm appreciative that I was able to provide some of those life learning skills for people who have come through the program.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you from my own firsthand experience that stuff that I learned or skills I developed in band, not just musically, but the stuff you talked about in the course of our conversation, discipline, compassion, leadership. Those are things that have definitely helped me in my life, in my career, and just being a part of communities that I've been lucky to be a part of, or even built up around myself, And I know from other people that they feel the same way. So that's more me telling you that than asking a question at that point. But I can absolutely tell you that that's the truth.
Thanks for sharing that, Jeremiah.
I don't really have any other questions, but I do want to give you the opportunity to, if you had anything else you wanted to say, or if there was something that you hoped we'd touch on, if we could bring that up now.
No, man. I think everything we've touched upon is very thorough. Some things that I'd never really thought about before. But man, I appreciate the opportunity. And again, my whole career is based on putting the spotlight on the students. It's you want the attention to go on the students, and now that I'm getting some of that, by you asking me to do the podcast, makes me very nervous to talk about myself. But you've made it very comfortable, so I appreciate that. And the time that we've spent, doesn't feel like it's been that long, but it's been a pleasure to be able to visit with you today. So thank you, man.
The pleasure is definitely mine. If I haven't made it clear, you're a very important person to me and to many other people who may be listening to this. And I'm glad to have had the opportunity to talk with you and to kind of find out a little bit about how you've thought about your career and the things you've done and the things you've done for other people. So I'm the one who appreciates it, as I said. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Stereoactive Presents, and thank you to my guest, Scotty Walker. The music in this podcast is composed by Hansdale Sue. My name is Jeremiah McVay. If you like what you hear in the show, please rate and review it in Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else that allows that. Doing so helps us to expand our audience and is much appreciated. And please follow us wherever you happen to listen to podcasts. Every little bit helps, and it is, again, truly appreciated. You can also get in touch with us at stereoactivemedia@gmail.com. And you can find more information about this show and everything else that Stereoactive Media is involved with at stereoactivemedia.com.
This podcast is produced by Stereoactive Media.